Hi, my name's Gina. I'm head of games at the Imaginarium studio. So you may know the Imaginarium. One of our founders is Andy Serkis, best known for Gollum and Caesar and performance capture. I was just going to be in the audience. That's how I booked in. Francesca grabbed me and said, would I moderate and be the person who'd never applied for funding, to ask people who'd applied for funding what it was like. So I'm kind of asking the questions that I imagine you're thinking of. I shall start off just by asking everyone to introduce themselves and what they're passionate about and the types of product they work on. And then we'll come back and talk about each specific project that you're working on.
Okay, hi, I'm Barbara. I'm from Poland, from Bloober team. And our company was established in 2008. And at the beginning, we were working on work-for-hire games projects. But then we received an experience. We've got really talented people, so we've decided to get bigger and start working on our own projects. And step after step, we decided to specialize in horror games, because most of our employees are really into horror games. Then we decided that, okay, so maybe not jump scare games, we want to make storytelling games, that the story will scare you. Yeah, and that's how we get to the point we are now. Last year we launched a game, Layers of Fear, which was pretty big success for our company. And now we are working on two projects funded from a media program. One is Medium, the other one is Spiro. And the third project, Observer, which will be launched soon, I guess.
Awesome. I'm Brjann. I'm running a company called Image and Form. We sit in Gothenburg, Sweden, and make games in a franchise that we call SteamWorld. So we made a game called SteamWorld Dig, and then we made a game called SteamWorld Heist. Before that, we made a game called SteamWorld Tower Defense. And probably we're going to make SteamWorld Just Dance or something like that next. We're actually working on a SteamWorld game now that has been funded. So there's a new game coming. I'm passionate about games. I love games. Yeah. There you go.
Thank you very much. My name is Kunal. I'm from Cape Copenhagen in Denmark, so not too far away from yourself. Firstly, I'm passionate about making games. That's all I've ever wanted to do from ever since I can move my thumbs. So basically, at Cape, we specialize in children's games. The biggest thing that we do is we make Lego games. So we do like Ninjago, Lego Elves, Duplo. We really want to make really fun games for kids and for parents as well. So that's where we specialize in. Through the Creative Europe, we've actually got 2 grants creating our own IPs called The Gentleman and Child, which we'll show a little bit later on. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Dan. I'm with a company called The Chinese Room that are based in Brighton. And we're 13 people. We've made 3 games. We're working on another 2 at the moment, as well as we're just re-releasing one of our games that came out a couple of years ago. We make story-driven games. That's kind of what we do and what we've managed to sort of carve out a place in the market to do. And we've just finished a prototype, and we're just about to, I think probably not next week, but the week after, we're planning on handing back our paperwork to round out our grant, because we've just finished the prototype, so it's pretty exciting.
I think what's really interesting is that these are all narrative games, but what is narrative? I think if we can have a couple of examples.
Gentleman was it was concepted by our CEO, who loved old school black and white silent musicals from back 1930s and 40s. The narrative on this one is that we actually don't have any voice. It's based the typical love story of a guy who falls in love with a girl who's kind of like has a father who's a baroness, and he doesn't believe that this guy is actually good enough. And we have like mini games within the game that kind of is the symbolic of their emotions, of heartbrokenness and getting together, proving himself. Basically, Child's about a little girl and her brother, and she's basically looking for her parents. Her little village has been war-stricken, and it's about her journey trying to find her parents through however how she can. And we set the player as the little girl who's trying to make basically heads or tails of what's going on around her. Again, from the narrative standpoint, again, there's no audio. It's purely going to pull in from the environment, the music, which we're really proud of, because it really puts you in that emotional state. Yeah.
So I was going to say, just looking at it, the child, I think you can see, is very narrative. The gentleman, I think, is slightly different. How much of a storytelling element is there, and how does that run through the game? Because when I first looked at the funding and saw narrative, I was thinking Telltale, I was thinking those kind of games. But this seems a lot broader than that.
It is, because we want to try and do something completely different, and that's why we find funding through Creative Europe is ideal, because it lets us have the ability to make a prototype that's completely different, that wouldn't traditionally get funded from another publisher or anything. With these two, like I said, we didn't want to go down the traditional routes of basically telling the player what to do and telling the player what to see, what to read and everything. We kind of wanted the player to kind of anticipate what they want to feel.
In a broken world, danger does not wait its turn. Except it does. It's turn-based. Join Rogue Captain Piper Faraday and face the challenges of the vast frontier. With free aiming instead of dice rolls, your skill makes all the difference. Use your surroundings to pull off fantastic trick shots. Treat yourself to a smorgasbord of missions. Face unparalleled monstrosities. Bullets will bounce. Things will explode. Turn up the steam for the heist of the century.
The idea behind SteamWorld is to make a universe where we can have the same lore and the same backstory at the very far back. It's the same world and everything, and it's steam-driven robots that have been forced to take over Earth after humanity has just gone and blown itself to bits. And the idea is to take vastly different types of gameplay and tell sort of the same or parts of the same story through very, very different perspectives. Then I guess like in one game, it's like in one game you would have a pair of glasses on, and in the other one you would have a telescope. So it's using very different techniques to tell like pieces of an entire bigger story.
Dan, can you just give us a quick outline of Total Dark for anyone who's never visited your website?
So Total Dark started off as when we started working on it, the idea was, can we tell a story that doesn't exist, where there's enough consistency of kind of like striking images and that you're kind of compelled to try and find the logic and the center to this story without actually there being a story there. Which seemed like a really good idea on paper, and so right now we're trying to keep the same thing of going. Actually, what we're really interested in is the player as a storyteller within games, and how do you create as much space for players to tell their own stories, and your job effectively being to create an architecture and provide all the building blocks, and then provide the impetus and kind of inspire the player to tell a story within it. So Total Dark actually for us was the biggest kind of liberating thing about the money for us is that it's started off again as a fairly traditional RPG, isometric RPG, which we haven't done before. We've always been traditionally very, very mechanic light. And although a lot of our team have worked on a lot of traditional games, we hadn't actually done one as a studio. So we wanted to see whether the kind of storytelling which we've done in our previous titles that have been quite mechanic light could then operate within a much more mechanically dense game. So it's a kind of it's an isometric action adventure, I guess, more adventure RPG. That all takes place in the current story on the inside surface of a pocket universe that's 19 inches across that may or may not be Wales, and it may or may not be in a 1970s research institute, and none of the characters are who they say they are, and the game might not actually be the game it says it is, and trying to do this whole thing here of kind of going, actually, how can we create something, have the freedom to create something with the support that's self-funded that actually would be an impossible elevator pitch to ever put in front of a publisher. That's got to be fun. That's got to be worth exploring. So it's changed a lot over the course of the funding, which has been really, really interesting. I'm sure we'll come back to later, that actually what was there on paper, we've had the freedom to go, do you know what, on paper's all very well, but what works in reality? And to be able to adapt that as we go along. So yeah, we work on the basis of find a good story and tell it the best way you can. And we kind of got a really exciting story that we're trying to tell at the moment. But it's the very difficult thing I find with these kind of things is when you're really, really story focused, a lot of the time you don't want to talk too much about it because you kind of go, well, if we do that, then what's the point in making it? And if we can put it into words, then why are we making a game? So yeah, it's kind of a fun place to be, I think. This isn't a sort of an early development image from it. So we were one of the things that we're looking at, because we've been publisher funded for the last couple of our games, we're going to self-funded now. And so a real challenge to us is we've got used to very, very big budgets in terms of representation of art and all this sort of stuff. And how do we maintain the kind of depth and complexity that we always try and achieve with our storytelling, which is a real driving force in the company, when actually we're operating on much, much, much smaller kind of budgets. And it's basically, aside from the grant money, we're having to pay for everything else. So you start really, really caring about the assets when every single one that gets made goes ka-ching, and you watch your bank balance go down a little bit. So yeah, it's trying to find a way of being really sort of like bold and colourful and quite sort of comic book, but to kind of splice that across with something which is quite still got that kind of like, I guess, depth and psychology to it.
Great. And finally, Barbara, tell us a little bit more about your two games.
Okay, so first one, Medium. Well, the main thought of the game is you have only seen half so far. So I cannot say a lot more because the game is really innovative. Its conception is based on a simultaneous game on 2 screens, and right now it is subject to patent application in US. So sorry, I cannot say more. And the second one project is about finding a common point between history, special area of history, psychology, and the decision-making process. And what we want to show the player with those 2 games is that by making the decisions while you are playing, you can discover some part of your personality that you cannot discover in anywhere else. So this might be really scary for you, believe me.
Great. So I think that kind of gives us an idea of how wide narrative really is, and pretty much most stuff is going to fit into narrative in one way or another. So can you just give us a brief description of where you were in the project when you applied for the money, so how far down the road you were, and why did you choose this funding? So why was it applicable to what you were doing at the time?
Okay, while we were applying for the funding, we were at the very beginning of the development process. We had a general idea about the game, the general concept, the idea on how the game will look like, but we needed to verify if it will fit the players, if they would like to play that game. What was the other part of the question? Why did you choose the funding? And why did we choose the funding? Because it's perfect for the game development. It is made exactly for that, and when we compare it to other regional, local fundings, it's really simple, it's easy, the formalities are limited to the minimum, so there was no reason not to do it.
So yeah, we at Image and Form we've had 4 games approved with the European, with Creative Europe. So it means that we at every stage with every game it's been a very early stage. We've had a game design document more or less. Sometimes it's been more bare bones than it's been more. It's been less than more sometimes. Let's put it that way. But and also like Dan was saying, it's like when you apply, you think you know what the game is going to be, and you're very afraid of sort of going down another route because it's sort of this is what was funded. What will happen to this money if we go ahead and change it? I think it's you don't change it just because you want to change it. You change it because you have to. The game has to get better somehow, and yeah. So I think Europe is happier for it. We're yeah, all of Europe is happier for it. So we applied for it in the beginning because there was nothing like there was no similar funding in Sweden at that time. We have a neighboring country where everyone's a billionaire called Norway, and they were just sprinkling money onto anyone who had a creative idea, right? Who didn't want to devote his or her life to oil. So it was really unfair. That's what I thought. So when we found out about this, that we could actually apply through Creative Europe, or the media program as it was only called at that time, we jumped on it. We've failed, I think, a couple of times too. I think we've applied 6 times and received funding 4 times. So it's a decent percentage so far.
It's a good track record. For gentlemen, when we applied, we were really early stage of a prototype. It was just sprites, if that. It was just more the like you say, really high level game design doc. For child, that was actually still images in a video, but it kind of portrayed the exact mood that we wanted to push on that game, and I think that's what sealed the deal for the funding for child. Why? Who doesn't want free money? But I think I touched on it before. It's purely down to that trying to get funding for unique games, it would be really difficult to go to publishers, especially with like a high-level GDD of something that's not quite mainstream, that's quite not everyone knows about it, and you don't know what it is at that point because it's going to change, and it's just unless you've got like a Norway who wants to throw money at you, or a rich uncle, it's not really going to happen, and that's why Creative was obviously the perfect fit for our 2 projects.
I think kind of similar. We had it started off as a paper-based role-playing game system because I was obsessed with Boris and Arkady Strugatsky's Roadside Picnic, which is the greatest novel ever written, and couldn't understand why no one had written a role-playing game about it. So I wrote one, and then we went, this could be a good game. So we wanted to come out from being reliant on publishers, which meant anything that can subsidise self-funding a project, because if you want to be sustainable as a studio, self-funding is the way to go because your returns are that much higher, but it's really, really risky. So it seemed like a really good way of being able to underwrite that experimentation time, bedding in sort of more complex mechanics with the team, and it just felt like a really, really good concept doing. So we submitted, I think, 6 or 7 concept images, black and white concept images, and the rulebook along with our application.
I just wanted to add one final thing there to applying. So why should you apply? I think we mentioned it before that if you got to be serious about your project, because if you're not, if you can't deliver at the end, there is an end to the time you have to try to make something. If you haven't got a very good explanation at the end, or even better, a prototype, you might have to pay that money back, right?
And you don't. I mean, I think, is it still the same where you don't get all the grant money? You get a little bit of the grant money, then you have to spend not just the grant money, but your match funding, and then you pull the rest of the grant money down. So it's not money that you won't be able to pull it down and go, it's great, we just get this free bit of money and then it doesn't really matter. You have to make a serious investment as a company. But that's why it's a good grant system, because you're only up against projects which are serious. And that means also that when people are looking at the grant, they're taking it more seriously, and they're taking you seriously if you've got the grant, because you're clearly actually investing a lot in the project yourself. So I think it's really, really important. It's not a kind of just speculative, chuck it in kind of thing.
So the big question, how much did you get? What did you spend it on? Because it was really interesting when I think Francesca mentioned conferences and things. And having spent the money, would you have spent it differently, knowing what you know now?
Okay, we've received 2 times the maximum amount. 150,000 euros. What we spent it on, to be honest, I didn't realize that project personally. So I can say for sure that for people, for salaries, for verifying the assumptions of our ideas, so focus groups, for example. And that's what I can say for it right now.
Yeah, we've once received the maximum amount. That was for the latest game, and before that we didn't have the nerve to ask for the full amount. It's like we're Swedish and we don't do stuff like that. We're born ashamed, right? Now, so I think it sort of escalated along the way, like a small amount for the first game, and then a bigger amount, and then almost the full amount, and then obviously the full amount towards the end. We're spending the money on salaries, basically, because those are the people who, the people in the office who are making the prototype. That is sort of the end of the development phase of each game.
For child, we got the maximum. For gentleman, I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's all gone.
Yeah, pretty much. It's the same as you guys. It's all gone on production, nothing else. And salaries. I think you kind of mentioned it before. Every penny has to go towards that game, and you can't, you can't waste it on anything else. Anything else should come out. Well, I believe should probably come out of the studio's pocket, because if they're really into it, then that's where it should come from.
We got 126,000, and I've been kicking myself ever since why we didn't apply for the whole thing. I think we had the English equivalent of going, if we apply for just less, they'll somehow take us more seriously. And still baffles me why we made that decision. It's a complex form. The process requires you to take it very, very seriously. The process requires you to invest your own money into it. How much should you apply for? You should apply for however much you can match. If you can match the full amount, apply for the full amount. If you can't afford to match the full amount, find out how much you can put into it and apply for that in match funding. Go for as much as you can. Because it's prototyping, and the more you prototype, the more time you spend on it, the better your game will be, the more likely the chances your game will be a success. So there is no, don't be Swedish or English. Go in and go. Believe in what you do. If you believe in what you do enough to be dumping tens of thousands of pounds into it, you should believe in your game enough to apply for the full amount.
Don't be afraid of asking for the maximum amount, because we're so optimistic about how little money we're going to spend on the game. In the end, so SteamWorld Heist that you looked at there, we thought we were going to spend absolute maximum 10 months in making that game, and we ended up spending 2 years, right? It's like more money than Japan spends in a year. Or something. It felt like it anyway. It was like so much money. So the thing is that don't be afraid of if you think that, oh my God, what a big, they're never going to fund this project because it's too expensive. That's just better. Go that way if you, be realistic, right? Last year, The Witcher got approved, right? That's an important point. Like a massive game, which probably cost more to make than SteamWorld Heist even, right? So it's like, like on the other end, it seems like there is no, you can't be too big to apply for this. But it's really clever. I think it's made that way because A company like it's CD Projekt, right? Who made Witcher. They can actually apply and use that money for prototyping, which is exactly what it's supposed to do, meaning that they don't have to run away with company funds and make.
So just to ask the big question, where do you get your other 50% from? And are you using any other government support? So particularly in the UK, tax credits, but anything else in Europe? I know you can't use any other EU money, but is there anything else you can use?
So the two things you need to know about in the UK, one is you've got the UK Games Fund, which is up to 25,000, which is non-returnable. It's a grant, so you should all be applying for that anyway. And they've closed it off now, but I think there'll be another round. But like the first way through it is you do a really, really short application form, then you make a 2-minute video, and then you only do a more detailed application if you make it through those 2 rounds. So in terms of speculative initial cash fund, when that comes back live again, everyone in this room should apply for it if you're a UK-based company, because it's literally no strings, and you can do it in a day, the first couple of rounds of application. The second one is UK tax breaks. If you are a UK company, you will get UK tax breaks unless you do something really, really stupid, because you will be eligible. They're really powerful. They're really, really important. You should be applying for them. And if you don't have an accountant that can manage that process for you, you need to get one, because they'll pay for themselves many, many, many times over accessing UK tax breaks. There are also quite a lot of financing companies now that are offering loans against UK tax breaks, where they'll look at your projected tax break and they'll loan you the money up front based on what your tax break is supposed to come back as, minus a deduction. You have to be a bit careful with that. Obviously, it means you are in hock to a financier in some way or other. You need to look at the numbers and make sure they stack up, because if you don't spend the money and reclaim the money on your UK tax break, then your loan's going to kind of like, it can put you in that situation. But if you are really going, we do not have any money, we literally can't raise the money anywhere, if you can project that you will be alive 12 months down the line, you will have paid tax and you are eligible for UK tax breaks, you can borrow against the money that comes back to you. But again, you have to watch your cash flow, because it can take a while before that rebate on your taxes comes back. So you have to be a bit careful with that. But those are really powerful financing options if you can't raise the money elsewhere, particularly the way publishers are in the UK at the moment. There's not a lot of money sloshing around out there, and they're unbelievably risk averse at the moment. So don't rely on being able to get any kind of publisher investment in terms of what you're doing.
Okay. So outside of the UK, have you guys used any other kind of funding to help support, or where did you get your other 50% from?
Well, as every company, we need to earn money. So from selling our other titles, we issued shares. We've had public share issuance, debentures, credits, like all sort of sources of money.
A lot of prostitution, obviously. No, it's in the beginning we had to do work for hire on the side, but which is prostitution. Sorry, but after that, it sort of the money comes from selling previous titles, obviously, and there is nothing so beautiful in Sweden as tax breaks. In Sweden it's tax and death. That's what we believe in, and. Yeah, that's it. For a while we could actually apply for. There was a Nordic fund, so Nordic developers could apply, but it was a very, very small fund, or grant fund. Yeah. So yeah, work for hire. Work for hire is not a bad idea throughout development anyway. It's very good to sort of have some extra income and not relying completely on your first title. It's just advice.
You have the money you pay yourself, and you have the money which you charge for your services as a studio if you're doing work for hire, and those two figures are not necessarily the same things. So if you're charging a client £600 a day for services as a studio, and you are taking home out of that, your cost of that is less. You're building surplus, right? Which is, the key for work for hire anyway. You charge more than you spend. So that creates breathing space, because then you're actually spending real money on the grant, but you're accessing more money from work for hire than than is going to be the whole thing. You generate that profit from the work for hire and you invest that profit, so it's real money spent. So it's not kind of like sweat bucks effectively. It's real actual cash, but you're just creating that sort of like that profit which you're making from whatever your other activities are, you're reinvesting that as real money into it. So, for example, we're working with a partner-funded project at the moment, and obviously we've built in kind of like an income stream into that. We're reinvesting that income stream, that's subsidising capital which we have from other games in terms of being able to meet the costs of then the people that we're employing to work on the EC project. Effectively, it's coming from two different places. So it's the usual self-funding thing. You scrabble around and you get that money wherever you can. But you should be anyway. I think work for hire is the most powerful way probably of generating the money that comes in, and that's kind of about managing that cash flow and making sure that it's profitable in the first place.
I would also say look out for the EIS and SEIS schemes, particularly in the UK. And for Brjann, come and set up a studio here. You get tax credits. You'd be more than welcome.
So yeah, when you're done with the alpha stage of the game, so when you have a prototype, you sort of put together a report and send that in, and then you need to sort of, so you submitted a budget in the beginning of with the application and so on. At the end, you submit a budget again, but like a real budget. what really happened, sort of, and once that is approved, I mean all those documents, then it doesn't take very long. Less than years. No, it takes weeks, I would say. Yeah.
If you're talking about sort of trying to go to publishers, for example, classic kind of game publishers, then there's no such thing as a pitch package. There's an initial approach, and then there's bunkering down for the months it will take to go through the process and generating what they ask for along the way. So it can be as simple as an elevator pitch, potentially with a couple of images, get their interest. You'll probably have to do something involving sort of a person month count and an idea of overall cap budget. And the critically important question is, how much are they currently spending? Because if you go over that, forget it. It doesn't matter how much they like your project, you won't get it. But then, to be honest with you, from our experience in the last few years, no matter what you give them, they'll go, that's great, and then they'll sort of disappear over the horizon for about 3 months, and you'll be emailing them and phoning them up and going, hello, watching your bank balance tick down. And then eventually they'll come back and go, can we have this? And it's the one thing you haven't produced. And so you produce that and kick it back up the food chain, and they go really, really quiet again, and then you start hassling them again, and they come and they go, could we just have this as well? And so investing a huge chunk of money up front in a pitch probably isn't smart, because actually what you want to be doing is learning as much as you can about the publisher and adapting constantly to what they need, because they have different internal systems. And I mean, some of the publishers we've spoken to have had committees meeting about games we had one from one publisher, and they said they were looking at strategic content demand audience planning research, and we were like, I've no idea what the fuck that is, but it probably just is a spreadsheet. But you need to kind of get a sense of what they're looking for. So I wouldn't develop a pitch, and whatever you do develop, make sure it's flexible, because you want to be able to take that pitch up and put it to like 8 or 9 people simultaneously and adjust to what they're looking for, which is very different from a funding application where it is just going, right, where do the points get allocated, what do I need to produce to score against these markers to go through.
Some of you have failed, so can you tell us what happened when you failed? Did you get good feedback?
Thank you.
Well, yeah, but failed is only one step away
failure,
from succeeding.
Okay, yeah. So we failed and we succeeded a few times. It's I think we've succeeded more than we failed. Let's put it that way. So we've learned a little bit about how to do it. And I think in the beginning we tried to put together applications, and we tried to second guess what they wanted to hear. And it was sort of just eager to please applications. I think if you believe in your game idea, just write what is so great about it in there. And don't get repetitive and sort of, like you said, excellent. I mean, you don't have to tell it more than once or twice what makes this game so fantastic. But don't try to sort of, they probably want to hear this and this. That is not a good strategy, I think. Yeah, because these people, like you said, there is a point score, and you get a thorough analysis of your application afterwards, and it's nice. It's a really nice piece of work. They haven't just been sitting in Brussels eating Belgian food, or eating pastries or no, but they really work for their money. That's what I think. You get this analysis, and it's fair. It's really, you look at it, and it's like yeah, okay, should have done that better, and so on. I think in the beginning I was thinking about the gentleman behind you there who was talking about what is the smallest amount you could ask for. That's what we did in the beginning. We asked for very little money because we thought that there would be a bigger chance of getting the money if we didn't ask for very much, rather than detailing what is so great about the game. Sort of putting the Swedishness aside. It sounds like a joke, but it has been a problem for us that we have had a hard time being American about this. We've sort of we're very careful about when we talk about our games. It's overly modest, I would say that. Yeah. So just go for what you think is great and not what they want to hear, and don't ask for too little because it doesn't make sense.
So when you submitted your application, what did you submit with your application? Was it a GDD or was it just a short one-page pitch doc?
Initially, it was a GDD, and I totally agree with you. Like, game development is iterative. It's, it changes, but I totally believe that Creative Europe knows that. If you submit a GDD, it doesn't mean it's not the Bible. It doesn't mean that's what you're going to do. Especially, like, it's 36 months. 36 months, anything can change. And so don't feel like you have to make exactly what your initial GDD is.
I think there's a difference between a game design document and a game treatment, and I think neither of those is useless. It's actually quite super useful, at least to us. We're not. Yeah, again, maybe we're not cutting-edge developers, right? But it's really helpful for us to be able to explain to each other in the studio what the game is going to be like. I think each GDD is like 15 to 25 pages, something. But I would rather call it a game treatment document, like just treating the game, talking about the game, not sort of parameters for the game designers and so on. It doesn't contain that.
We did, and ours wasn't nowhere near 15 pages. It was more. It wasn't a traditional GDD. It was more just pitching the essence of the game, and kind of getting across the idea and the reason why we want to make this game. And we believe that was enough to get the funding, because if the way I see it is, if we're passionate enough to want to make this game, and we're passionate enough to kind of try and expose it to someone else, because that's what you're doing as well, then it should be enough.
I think as well, can I say, I think the other thing to really just distinguish is there are things which are useful to you as a developer, and there are things which are, if you are spending someone else's money, they define the hoops. And the reason that Sony don't have internal documents is because Sony spends Sony's money. But if you go to Sony to spend Sony's money, they start asking you to produce things like that. They want to see a clear target. So it's, if you're applying for funding, it's almost broadly irrelevant whether or not that document's useful to you as a development team. What you're doing is you're showing the funder that you're going to spend their money well. And that's what they're actually after. And a GDD, when there isn't a prototype and when they don't know you personally and when they're not involved in your internal processes, is a powerful way of creating trust that the funder thinks you're going to spend the money wisely and appropriately. So think of it in those terms rather than whether or not it's useful to you.
So you get the email that says, I've got the funding. So is that where the nightmare starts? So, government funding in the past has meant that you've got to fill in loads of reports and paperwork and stuff. So how does this work? How easy is it once you get the money to then go through that process to the final day where it's all signed off?
Well, actually, when I compare the Creative Europe program to our local Polish programs, it is way much simpler than our local funding. The formalities are limited to the minimum. You file the final report, and really, it is really simple and, well, maybe not that really simple, but if you follow your budget, it is okay. You can do it, really.
It's simple, really, and the people are kind, and they're really knowledgeable. I think it's just amazing. So, yeah, the nightmare really doesn't start there at all. No, it just works great.
I can't really say anything more than that. It's simple. There's a lot of hoops, but there's a reason for all the hoops, and that's the bottom line. Comparable to like other funding in Denmark, which is available, it's a nightmare going through them because they obviously, from my knowledge, that they want milestone deliveries, and then they get into the really grittiness of the money, of CVs of people's their yearly salaries. They want to know the like precise details with, and so it's a two-sided coin basically. But I think definitely easier for Europe.
The only advice I would give is if you're going to be doing this thing potentially for a couple of years, even if you're only doing it sort of back of the bus ticket things, timesheets, and document what you spent on what. Because 2 years later, when you've had other projects coming in and out, you might have had work for hire coming in and out, you might have had other people's money getting wrapped up in the project as well. When that final report comes in, you don't want to be trying to extricate exactly what was your match funding, what was EC grant, what came from somewhere else. So we had timesheets running because we were working on 3 projects last year, so we knew where people's time was actually being spent on the EC grant, so we could qualify that and make sure we were spending the money we were supposed to be spending. We also got, because there was a lot of rapid iteration and because it was prototyping, because we knew we were probably going to deviate a long way, realistically, because it's game development, from what we said we were going to make, we asked the team to be capturing vines or GIFs or screenshots at least every couple of days of what they were working on. So 2 years later, we could very, very quickly visually go back over and go, how did the game develop? And we didn't have to go through reams of paper or try and remember what we were doing in August 2015. So document, record, timesheet, track, even on a simple level through the project, and you'll save yourself a huge headache at the end.